Greetings, everyone. My name is Father Peter Fink, speaking again from New England. And the theme today is about leadership and how Jesus himself invites us how to consider how we should lead and how we should serve. Well, I've been a Jesuit now for just short of 70 years. And in that time, I have had all sorts of leaders, provincials, rectors, superiors, in my Jesuit community. And outside the Society of Jesus, presidents and pastors and directors of all sorts. Some have been very good. A few, not so very good. And most were somewhere in between the good and the not so very good. And I don't know how I would rate myself in the few times that I had been a leader. But there was one person who stands out for me as a very important guide. He was a superior, but a superior from another country, up north. His community was much like the community I was in here in Cambridge. At one point, I made a comment about my own superior, not so nice, and he chuckled. He said, "The problem with X is that he came with great plans, which he became a superior. Great expectations. He knew how the community should be even before he got there." Boy, I understood that. He was like that director who knows how the play should be even before he meets the people who will be on stage. What is the great line? How do you make God laugh? Show him your plans. Well, I never wanted to be a leader myself, but it happened a few times. Interim, not permanent, but superior nonetheless. And in each case, I remembered my Canadian mentor. My only thought was simply to listen. To know how these people lived, whom I am serving, how they lived, how they loved, how they serve, what their community was like, what their apostolates are about. Not to bring any plans of my own. Just listen. And only then, as time went on, to interact together so that together we could plan not only how the community should be, but what other things could possibly happen within it. I told that to another Jesuit who was a superior, and he was not pleased. He had lots of plans. Good man, good friend, but as I say, he had too many plans. Now, of course, being a leader is a bit more complicated. You listen and sometimes you approve, but sometimes you cannot approve. What does Jesus say? It's not mine to give. And if the latter, those who ask may accept what you want. I don't like it, but I'll do it. But others might resist. And that too is the challenge of being a leader. But through it all, no matter what the outcome, to lead is to serve. Always, to lead is to serve. Well, in today's scripture reading, James and John were asking something for themselves. That was their plan. Something they wanted for themselves. And Jesus listened, like a good leader. He listened. But what they asked, as he said, wasn't his to give. And that's something he had to tell them. But, he was more concerned about something else as well. They were looking for glory, a glory they had not earned. They wanted to share in Jesus' glory. In this version it came from themselves, and in another gospel it comes from their mother. But in either version, the expectation or the plan was, what's in it for me? It was, of course, an offense to the other 10, another problem. But in Jesus' eyes, it was more than that. It was the opposite of the way a good leader should be. To lead is to serve. Do you know what you're asking? Well, let me tell you what you're asking. If you wish to follow me, this is the path that you must follow. The cup, which is the covenant of God's love, you will drink, because God's love will be upon you. And the baptism, which is the share of the cross, that's something you will taste. So Jesus called them all together, all 10, with the other 10 and these 2. Lesson 805 on being my follower. Yours is not to get your own self-importance going on here. I'm not here to simply reward you for being my friend, being my companion. If you wish to become great, and this is the great paradox of Jesus' own mission and word, the great paradox is, if you wish to become great, you must be a servant. And if you wish to be first, you must be a slave. Leaders of the Gentiles, well, they rule it over people. They put their own burdens on them. But it shall not be for you. Great line. It shall not be for you. Such a haunting phrase. Well, Robert Greenleaf takes this as a word for anyone who is in charge of anyone else. The servant leader is a servant first. We find it in church. There are bishops who serve us very well. And there are some bishops who try to control. We find it in our country. Leaders who think only of others. And yet there are some leaders who serve only themselves. And we find it in each one of us. Sometimes we're gracious and kind and loving, and sometimes, what's in it for me? The servant leader is a servant first. And the great temptation is to shift from being a leader who serves to a leader who simply tries to lead. Greenleaf says it very simply. If you lead first, you will be tempted by the desire for power, or by a need to gain possessions or popularity. And the danger is to become more and more like a despot than to be a servant, someone who seeks to control, not to serve. So Jesus gives us an invitation. Easy to hear, but like so many of his invitations, difficult to embrace. But it challenges our ego. It challenges all the things that the ego seeks. We Catholics know them as the 7 deadly sins, even though you're not supposed to talk about them these days, but they are 7 deadly sins. Vainglory or pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, anger, simple laziness. But one who listens first touches some other virtue, that thing we call humility. To be humble enough to learn how to be a servant. His or her lead is about caring for the other, being respectful and patient and kind. This is the kind of servant Jesus is, and this is the kind of servant he wants us to be. Thinking of the other first is what makes someone a true leader. Thinking of the other first is the invitation and the challenge that Jesus sets before us. Because if we serve as Jesus served, if we listen as Jesus listened, as we love as Jesus loved, well, that will just be for us to continue in our world to do his mission, his ministry, which is what we are as a church.